The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected.
It's a really unfortunate attack on, I think, one of the foundational American principles.
High-stakes hearing on birthright citizenship, the battle among Supreme Court justices over immigration and the power of federal judges. And several Middle Eastern countries welcome President Trump with open arms. What his trip could mean for the U.S. Plus, a Brown student who sent a Doge-like email to administrators won't face any discipline. His first on-camera interview since the decision. From the nation's capital, this is the National News Desk, America's News. Now, we are glad you are here with us. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and on this Weekend Edition, we take a look at the big headlines of the week, and we look ahead at what to expect, starting with the 4 big stories we've been following this week. The Supreme Court hearing arguments on birthright citizenship. The president returning from a 4-day trip to the Middle East. Egg prices drop as inflation cools, and staffing woes and telecommunications issues continue to impact airports nationwide. But first, new information: Newark Mayor Ras Baraka could go to trial in July on a trespassing charge that he says is silly and should be dropped. Baraka in court Thursday after his arrest at a New Jersey ICE facility last week. The Democrat told reporters afterwards that he believes he was targeted during the protest at Delaney Hall. During the hearing, interim U.S. Attorney for New Jersey, Alinaba, said they have the evidence to support the charge. Now to Washington, D.C., where the Supreme Court heard arguments in a case examining the authority of lower court judges to issue nationwide injunctions. President Trump believes lower court judges have too much power and have been using it to block his agenda. As the National News Desk, Christine Frizzell reports, the case stems from the president's executive order ending birthright citizenship.
Outside the Supreme Court, hundreds gathered in support of the constitutional guarantee of birthright citizenship, which President Trump for years has said he opposes.
The 14th Amendment is very questionable as to whether or not somebody can come over, have a baby, and immediately that baby is a citizen.
But inside the courtroom, questions mostly focused on just how far the president can go in carrying out that conviction.
There are 680 district court judges, and they are dedicated and they are scholarly, and I'm not impugning their motives in any way, but you know, sometimes they're wrong.
You claim that there is absolutely no constitutional way to stop, put this aside, to stop a president from an unconstitutional act.
The High Court asked to weigh in on nationwide injunctions. In the case of the 14th Amendment, 3 lower court judges have blocked Trump's policy from taking effect. Since taking office, more than a dozen nationwide injunctions have been issued on multiple Trump policies. Critics and the Justice Department arguing that puts too much power in the hands of judges to block the president's agenda.
Universal injunctions exceed the judicial power granted in Article 3, which exists only to address the injury to the complaining party.
Critics have a different take.
That if you don't like the nationwide injunctions that federal judges, both Republican and Democrat, are issuing, that don't do illegal unconstitutional stuff.
If the justices side with Trump, as they appear they may, it could have a sweeping impact on the power of lower court judges in this country.
It means that the judges' decisions would be much more limited. It would just be in front of the people before them, not for the whole country.
Again, an immediate answer to the birthright citizenship question is unlikely in this case. But a decision on some of the other big questions raised here is expected sometime before July. I'm Christine Frizzell at the Supreme Court for the National News Desk.
Former FBI Director James Comey is under investigation by the Secret Service because of a post you see right here he made on social media. The now deleted post of seashells spelled out the numbers 8647. The number 86 can often refer to getting rid of something, while 47 corresponds to Trump's current term in office. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem claims that it was a threat against the president, an accusation Comey denies, adding he didn't know that people associated the numbers with violence. He says he took down the post because he opposes, quote, violence of any kind. Pageantry, pomp, and circumstance. That also filled President Trump's visits to Saudi Arabia and Qatar this week. Trump receiving high praise in the UAE for his efforts to strengthen the relationship between the two countries.
The UAE remains committed to working with the United States to advance peace and stability in our region.
You are considered a truly great warrior, and you've been through the wars. You're a great warrior, a very strong man, a brilliant man, a man of vision.
In March, the UAE pledged to invest $1.4 trillion into the U.S. While there, the president also said that the U.S. was getting very close to securing a nuclear deal with Iran, and Tehran had sort of agreed to the terms. A Brown University student will face no discipline after sending a Doge-like email to thousands of administrators. The university is sending Alex Shea an email Wednesday informing him that he did not violate the code of conduct, the student conduct. This case drawing national attention, including from Elon Musk. The National News Desk, Jeff Harris, spoke with Shea and has more on his reaction to the news.
Shea said his hearing was last week, and simply put, he won, saying he convinced Brown's own reviewer, who the university assigned to this case, that he didn't break any rules, adding that he believes the charges were retaliation for exposing waste. Back in March, Shea, who's a student journalist at Brown, sent emails to thousands of school administrators asking them to explain their jobs and dig into why tuition is just north of $90,000 a year.
It was respectful, and it was a press request, a request for comment.
Shea listed the administrators' names on a website called Bloat at Brown. Shortly after, university officials responding with disciplinary charges.
They hit me with emotional harm. Then it got changed to misrepresentation. They argued that my process of sending the emails and gathering the data on these employees violated Brown's technology policy.
Upon learning of the charges, the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression stepping in, criticizing Brown over its commitment to free speech.
Our primary concern is building a culture of free expression and specifically of a free press at Brown.
On Wednesday, after nearly 2 months fighting the charges, Shea receiving an email from a university official saying after review, they found him not responsible on the charges.
There wasn't nearly enough in the allegations they put forward to justify any of the charges.
I continue to prosecute this case against Brown for killing the American dream.
When asked to comment on the outcome of Shea's hearing, a university spokesperson telling us in part, since the start of this matter, Brown has proceeded in complete accordance with free expression guarantees and appropriate procedural safeguards under university policies and applicable law. Now, Shea went on to say he believes those who retaliated against a student journalist need to be held responsible. He is also calling on University President Christina Paxson to resign. I'm Jeff Harris reporting from Washington.
The Environmental Protection Agency plans to roll back first ever limits on certain toxic forever chemicals that contaminate drinking water supplies across the country. The Trump administration said it wants to reconsider whether limits are needed for 4 synthetic chemicals called PFAS. Low levels of the chemicals are linked with certain cancers, developmental effects, and other health ailments. EPA mandated testing has found them in nearly half of Americans' drinking water. The agency will keep in place limits for 2 common PFAS. In your money, the average rate on a 30-year mortgage rose to 6.81% this week. That is up from 6.76% last week, according to mortgage buyer Freddie Mac. Still, they note rates remain under the 7% threshold, adding that stable mortgage rates paired with moderately rising inventory are attracting home buyers into the market, with purchase applications up 18% from last year. In just one single day this week, Representative Nancy Pelosi allegedly raked in $4.7 million, according to a stock market watchdog group. This all comes while other members of Congress are actively working on legislation to make sure she can't make trades anymore. Sinead Bowens from the Fact Check team joining us now to discuss. So this bill is called the Pelosi Act. What does it entail?
Yeah, Dee. So the idea is to stop lawmakers from making money off the companies they're supposed to be regulating. Now, if they break the rules, they'd have to give any profits back to taxpayers. The bill still lets them invest in things like mutual funds or treasury bonds, but they'd have to sell off any individual stocks or put them in a blind trust within 6 months of taking office.
So what about lawmakers' spouses or family members? It's my understanding that Nancy Pelosi's husband has already made millions off the stock market as well.
Right, so under Senator Josh Hawley's bill, spouses of lawmakers would also be banned from trading individual stocks while their partner is in office. Now, the bill specifically includes spouses in the restriction. It doesn't specify any restrictions for members' kids, though.
All right, Janae, thank you. And Janae will be back a little bit later to dig into a new app that has a sole purpose of tracking Nancy Pelosi and her husband's trades in the stock market to help others get rich. Coming up next, from sweeping tax cuts to slashing prescription drug prices and ongoing peace talks abroad, Senator Rand Paul joins us to discuss it all. Plus, the economy rebounding following a rocky April. Why the Trump administration says this may be a sign of things to come. A new Texas bill could allow teachers to pray in the classroom. The Senate bill says school districts may not infringe on employees using religious speech or prayer while working. Some lawmakers feel the bill brings the state up to speed, considering recent Supreme Court rulings, most notably a case in 2022 where the High Court ruled a high school coach could not be fired for praying on the football field after games. Some free speech advocates believe it's an overstep.
The religious expression was brief, quiet, personal, and private. All of these factors were noted by the court. All of those factors are key limitations on what the court actually found in Kennedy, and therefore SB 965 goes a great deal further than just codifying what was in the opinion.
The bill passed the Senate and is now being reviewed by the House State Affairs Committee. And Trump's tariffs, codifying tax cuts, prescription drug prices, and controversy over Qatar's jumbo gift. Just some of the big headlines on the Hill this week. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul joining our Jen Jeff Code earlier this week to discuss.
I want to start with tariffs. I know you're not a fan, but you did say recently if the negotiations made tariff barriers lower, you would compliment the president. Shouldn't there be a level playing field? What's your thoughts now?
You know, tariffs are a tax, and I'm just an old-fashioned conservative. I don't think taxing trade is a good idea. I'd rather reduce taxes. So if you want to encourage American industry, let's reduce taxes on American industry. If you want pharmaceutical companies to make drugs here that they're only making in China, reduce taxes here. My fear is if you just double or triple taxes in China and there are antibiotics that aren't made anywhere else, you might someday get them made here, but immediately what you're going to find is double and triple the prices. So there have been some progress. The deal with England looks like maybe a net positive. But, you know, we were already running a trade surplus with England. With China, they were at 145%, which is basically an embargo. They went down to 80, and now they're at 30. But there are some reports that there may be some additional tariffs still lingering around from the previous administration, that for some objects and some things that are being traded, the tariff would still be 50%. What will happen is the public will decide whether they like this as they decide whether or not the increase in prices is worth the idea or concept of fairness. So I think time will tell.
Right.
We don't yet know.
And there's still a lot of negotiating left to do in all of this. In the meantime, you know, you were talking about taxes, and there's a lot of debate amongst Republicans in Congress regarding taxes and the one big beautiful bill, especially cuts to Medicaid, which you have said absolutely needs more scrutiny. Can you talk about some of the provisions you do support when it comes to Medicaid reform?
Well, the bill has three parts. One part is to make the tax cuts from 2017 to make these tax cuts permanent. I do favor that. I voted for the tax cuts in 2017, and I think making them permanent is one way of bringing back that low unemployment that we had in the first Trump administration, historic low unemployment. So that I'm for. There has to be spending cuts because we're borrowing nearly $2 trillion a year right now. And so I am for spending cuts as much as the Republican majority can withstand. I have a feeling the spending cuts are going to be kind of wimpy, anemic. I don't think they're going to be sufficient. I think the deficit will still exceed $2 trillion. One of the reasons I believe that is a third component of the bill is raising the debt ceiling $5 trillion. This has never been done before. It's an historic amount. It's an obscene amount. It's something that is not conservative. And no conservative should support raising the debt ceiling $5 trillion. So that alone is enough for me not to support the bill. Even though I support large segments of the bill, my fear is that really true cutting is not going to happen. And one indication of that is the president has the ability to send some of the savings from Elon Musk and Doge back to us to vote on. And there'd been rumored to be a bill he was going to send back $9 billion. Well, $9 billion is essentially, unfortunately, a rounding error anymore. The deficit is set to be $2.2 trillion this year. If you cut $9 billion, it's going to be $2.191 trillion. So it's not enough, but even that, they're saying there aren't enough Republican votes to actually vote to cut $9 billion. So really, we need more strength of character. We need more intestinal fortitude. We need more people with the gumption to understand that we can't withstand these deficits forever. Interest payments are over $1 trillion now.
So what's it going to take for you to vote on this bill?
If they strip out the debt ceiling and let the Democrats vote for that, I'll vote for making the tax cuts permanent, and I'll vote for as much spending cuts as the Republican majority can withstand. But I'm not voting to raise the debt ceiling $5 trillion. I offered to raise it for 3 months, to raise the debt ceiling $500 billion, which is also an extraordinary amount for only 3 months, $500 billion. And the reason I would do it 3 months at a time is at the end of 3 months, I would look at the people who say they're going to reform their ways and balance the budget, and I would look at them and say, what have you done in the last 3 months?
Yeah.
What is the deficit going to be? And then we'd vote again. So instead of voting once and leaving the debt ceiling go up $5 trillion for the next 2 years, I'd make them vote every 3 months because it would be the leverage to try to make them do a good job.
Very quickly, Senator, there's been a question whether Trump should accept a gift of this Boeing 747 from Qatar. Legally, he can. I know you don't agree with it. However, there's still a big question as to why Boeing, America's largest aircraft maker, cannot deliver a new plane for the President of the United States. He's got these 2 planes serving as Air Force One, 35 years old. They were supposed to be phased out of service years ago. Boeing was supposed to be done with those replacements last year. Now says they're not going to be complete until after he's left office, 2029 or later. Why shouldn't Trump accept the Qatari gift? And what do you make of Boeing not able to deliver on their promise?
You know, I think Boeing has become a glorified extension of government. They're a bureaucracy. They're often paid on cost plus. So if their costs double from their original bid, they still get a percentage of whatever the overall cost is. So there needs to be more competition in the airline industry, and we need to start having competitive contracts. That being said, there is this little problem called the Constitution. The Constitution says that presidents can't take gifts from foreign leaders. They can accept them if approved by Congress, but this would have to be approved by Congress. Now, there's another way around this. If that plane is never going to be delivered and if they still keep caterwauling about the whole thing, what they ought to do is they ought to, the Qataris could give the plane back to Boeing and Boeing could sell it to the president and we could buy it. But even this plane is going to have to be retrofitted. It would have to have all the special communications that the president needs for Air Force One. It would also have to have special defensive weaponry that Air Force One has. So this is, I think, where we are on the other plane. I think the other plane is able to be flown and is finished. It's just getting all of the interior stuff done. That's been going on a year or more. So really, I'm not sure the Qatari plane speeds the process up, but it runs into constitutional problems. And there also is this problem that we sell enormous amounts of arms everywhere. We're the biggest arms merchant in the world. And if you are being asked to sell arms to Qatar and they also gave you a plane, will that color your perception of whether we should sell them arms or not? I think it adds a potential conflict of interest.
All right, Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, always great to see you, sir. Thanks for joining us. Hope you have a great weekend.
President Trump's tariff regime is turning into a new tool to ease or goose the U.S. economy. He applied across-the-board tariffs earlier in April, paused them, and then kept steep duties on China in place. And that triggered big losses in the stock market. Then Trump halted the restrictions on Beijing, resulting in stocks regaining value. The president is touting what he says is an economic renewal in the U.S.
The days of economic misery under the last administration are rapidly giving way to the greatest economy in the history of the world. We are rocking.
Economists and policymakers are still bracing for inflation to reaccelerate as companies try to orient themselves in Trump's tariff blitz. Coming up next, how the White House's tariff policy is impacting small businesses. Plus, thieves make off with hundreds of dollars worth of goods, the unusual product targeted, and the warning for retailers. The National News Desk team of reporters is bringing you the headlines from coast to coast. We're taking the pulse of America, and we start in Cincinnati, Ohio, where a local shop is now feeling the impact from Trump's trade back and forth with China.
Those lifts cost me $8,000, whereas normally they're about $2,500. They're for lifting cargo, lifting boxes up and down. They don't make them in the United States.
Todd Allman relies on fiberglass and specialized equipment from China to keep his Butler County business running. Allman Boats mainly supplies water taxis. The trade war sparked as it's expanding. Allman had to stop construction on a new building to make those boats, sending workers and contractors home because he didn't think he could pay them.
That basically shut my business down because that would more than double the cost of the boats that I built, and I've already had contracts out to build.
In the last month, he spent roughly $40,000 on tariffs for goods purchased from China.
Prosecutors say the suspect rammed the victim's vehicle multiple times with his black truck. Witnesses called first responders. Officials say the man died at the scene, and now prosecutors say the incident is directly related to his death.
Manslaughter fits here so long as the prosecutor can prove that the defendant's reckless actions caused the death of the victim.
Investigators say that the suspect's black truck had damage consistent with hitting the victim's red truck. The suspect has yet to be formally charged. In Franklin, North Carolina, police say thieves made off with $400 worth of deodorant products stolen from a grocery store. Officials say they took off in a 2023 black Chevrolet Suburban with Florida tags. Authorities believe the thieves were looking to resell the merchandise. Coming up next, a summer treat for moviegoers, the midweek movie deal that could have you taking more trips to the theater. And kickoff for the NFL season is right around the corner. The popular streaming service that won't let you miss a second of the action. Taking a look at the top trending stories on our website right now, Amazon has released a first look at a new movie focused on the life of legendary Raiders coach and broadcaster John Madden. Oscar winner Nicolas Cage will star as the man who led the Silver and Black to its first Super Bowl championship. Also, AMC Theaters is slashing the price of adult movie tickets by 50% on Wednesdays. The promotion kicks off July 9th, but you must be a member of the AMC Stubs Reward program to enjoy the reduced price. Singer Chris Brown was arrested in England on Thursday for allegedly hitting a producer with a bottle at a London nightclub in 2023. Those stories and more available right now at thenationaldesk.com. Uber is launching a new option that the rideshare company says can cost half as much as regular fares. Route Share will operate shuttles along busy routes with pickups every 20 minutes. It'll run during the peak weekday commuting hours of 6 to 10 a.m. and 4 to 8 p.m. The service is already in 7 major cities and will eventually be available nationwide. New information, YouTube will stream the Week 1 game between the Kansas City Chiefs and Los Angeles Chargers for free. No NFL game has ever been aired for free on the immensely popular video streaming platform. The September 5th game will take place in Brazil. Coming up, the Newark nightmare the FAA can't wake up from. The staffing cuts now plaguing plans for reform in a growing national shortage. You're watching the National News Desk, America's News Now. You can catch us live weekdays from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time, and anytime online at thenationaldesk.com. We'll be right back. The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected.
Can't fix this overnight. I can't fix this in a couple months. This is going to take us, a year, 2 years, 3 years.
Flying fears now a real concern. The aggressive and expensive short-term fixes for our nation's airport infrastructure, and explosive new details about the former president's decline. Some of the shocking revelations from a new book about Joe Biden's presidency. And a crackdown on hidden junk fees. The stern warning the FTC is issuing companies as tickets for the upcoming NFL season go on sale. From the nation's capital, this is the National News Desk, America's News Now. Thank you for joining us. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and we begin with the U.S. facing a dire shortage of air traffic controllers, and there is no end in sight. That's some of what Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy told members of Congress during revealing testimony about the state of air travel. He also disclosed where the FAA shops online to find replacement parts for decades-old systems. National correspondent Acha El-Nashar reports from Capitol Hill.
Devastating crash near Reagan National Airport.
Towers reporting a CRJ helicopter crash into the Potomac River.
And now continuing air traffic control outages in Newark, New Jersey, plus Denver and Atlanta, all have Americans wondering, what is going on with air travel?
We are facing a crisis.
During multi-day testimony on Capitol Hill, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy detailing to lawmakers who control the purse strings the extensive, sometimes shocking, cracks in the nation's air safety infrastructure.
It truly is 25, 35, 40 years old in some places. We should have paid way more attention to it as a country.
But Duffy says he does believe it is safe to fly.
Even the frustrations in Newark, when we've slowed traffic down, the key is not efficiency, the key is safety.
Delays at Newark earlier this week were due in part to there being only 3 air traffic controllers on duty, compared to the staffing target of 14 the New York Times was first to report. And the number of fully certified controllers on duty was at times 1 or 2.
I think the air traffic control shortage is critical. We're 3,000 short.
Then there's the extremely expensive task of replacing decades-old facilities, copper wire, and other equipment. And Duffy aims to do it all at once within just a few years, instead of a patchwork of fixes like they do now.
We do try to buy replacement parts on eBay for this really old equipment. Sometimes we can't even find it on eBay.
In September of last year, the Government Accountability Office reported 76% of the FAA's 138 air traffic control systems were unsustainable or potentially unsustainable. Getting the money to pay for upgrades is the hard part. Duffy says Congress should determine the price tag and provide all the money up front. Perhaps too tall an order. The most viable funding to date seems to be a proposed $12.5 billion in a party-line domestic policy package Republicans are still drafting and could take months to pass. On Capitol Hill, I'm Atra El-Nashar for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
The National Weather Service is desperately trying to fill over 100 critical vacancies ahead of hurricane season, which begins June 1st. The agency is offering reassignment opportunities for qualified former National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration employees as the agency remains under a federal hiring freeze. This comes after a wave of early retirements and firings of probationary workers. New information, the U.S. wants the NATO military alliance to ramp up its defense spending. At talks in Turkey, NATO's Secretary General agrees the nations need to spend more on beefing up their militaries to address a range of threats from Russia and China to terrorism around the world. The U.S. says countries should spend 5% of their GDP on their militaries over the next 7 years. That's a pretty big ask, considering just 22 of the 32 member countries are meeting the current 2% target. Florida has become the second state to ban fluoride in public drinking water. Thursday, Governor Ron DeSantis signed the Florida Farm Bill, banning the use of any additive in a public water system that does not meet the new definition of water quality additive. According to Florida's Surgeon General, more than 70% of residents who use community water systems receive water with added fluoride. Also, an update this week, the alleged Florida State University shooter has been denied bond and cannot contact the victims, their families, or any witnesses. A judge ordered this in Phoenix Eichner's first court appearance nearly a month after the tragic shooting on the university's campus, killing 2 people and injuring 6. The 20-year-old was released from the hospital Monday, treated for injuries from the incident. Eichner is a student at the school and the stepson of a sheriff's deputy. Authorities have not released a possible motive. The Department of Homeland Security's Office for Civil Rights and Civil Liberties was dissolved in late March, halting more than 500 investigations. In a report released this week, whistleblowers now say closing the office eliminates civil rights safeguards and mandatory oversight. An investigation into the arrest of Mahmoud Khalil was opened just days before officials working the case were put on administrative leave. Khalil was one of several foreign nationals the Trump administration accused of being a threat to national security. A health alert. More than 100 brands of store-bought rice contain significantly increased levels of arsenic and cadmium. In a new report, a quarter of the samples of rice from around the nation exceeded levels of inorganic arsenic allowed by the Food and Drug Administration for infant cereal. The USA Rice Federation argues that rice grown in the U.S. has the lowest levels of inorganic arsenic in the world and disagrees there's a health safety issue. To lessen arsenic when cooking. Use at least 6 cups of water per 1 cup of rice. New details, shocking revelations on former President Joe Biden's state of mind in a new book from Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson. Was his decline far worse than we've been led to believe? National correspondent Matt Gelka details the new bombshell allegations.
Had former President Joe Biden continued on with his campaign and pulled off a re-election win, his aides were reportedly discussing him using a wheelchair. It's one of the stories coming out in the upcoming book, Original Sin, President Biden's Decline, its cover-up, and his disastrous choice to run again, written by Axios reporter Alex Thompson and CNN anchor Jake Tapper. Falls like this one from 2023 reportedly caused aides to scramble to ensure more mishaps didn't happen, and his deteriorating condition was apparent in the way he walked, according to the book. A wheelchair couldn't be an option until after the election. Then, his disastrous debate performance happened.
We have to do with, look, if
the White House repeatedly said at the time the former president was sharp.
He is as sharp as ever, as I have known him to be in my engagement and my experience with him.
Biden himself gave his first American post-presidential interview to The View, defending his time in office and addressing the upcoming book bombshells.
Are these sources wrong?
They are wrong. There's nothing to sustain that. The only reason I got out of the race was because I didn't want to have a divided Democratic Party.
Questions about Biden's abilities eventually spooked donors and supporters, leading to his dropping out of the race, endorsement of then Vice President Kamala Harris, and ultimately a Donald Trump victory. Some Democrats who supported Biden at the time are now being questioned about what they saw compared to what they said.
I said what I believe to be true.
And you think he was as sharp as you?
I said I had not seen decline.
The upcoming book contains stories from 200 sources, and some members of the media are now admitting that the decline was a story that was underreported and missed in real time. Reporting in Washington, I'm Matt Gelka for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
And it is becoming more clear Democrats remain deeply pessimistic about the future of their party. In fact, according to a new AP poll, only about 1/3 of the party is very optimistic about what's next. That's down considerably from last year when 6 in 10 Dems claimed to have, as you see right there, a positive outlook. This new poll comes amid rising questions for the Biden administration and how much they knew about then President Joe Biden's mental capacity. A close ally of Biden, Democratic Representative James Clyburn, was recently asked about his opinion.
Straight with the public about his condition. Was he capable to run again?
I have no idea. I don't have a medical degree.
Clyburn played a significant role in shoring up the 2020 Democratic presidential nomination for Biden, even after heightened concerns in the aftermath of the first presidential debate. Nancy Pelosi and her husband have made millions trading stocks over the years, according to a watchdog group. And one thing is clear. People are paying attention, so much so that a viral social media account tracking her trades has now turned into a real investing app. The Fact Check team's Janae Bowens joining us now to discuss. So tell us more about this app.
Yeah, Dee, so it's called Autopilot, and it lets regular people copy the stock moves of politicians. Now, before it was an app, the founder started by tracking trades of politicians on Twitter and called it the Pelosi Tracker.
Okay, so after you download it, what's next? How does this work?
Yeah, so you link it to your brokerage account and choose a portfolio to follow, like Pelosi Tracker. When they make a trade, your account mirrors it.
I understand this is supposed to be fun. Tell us, first of all, how much does it cost?
Yeah, so it costs $99 a year, and users say some of these portfolios have actually performed pretty well. According to QuiverQuant, a trade watchdog group, Nancy Pelosi made $4.7 million in the stock market just on Monday. But politicians have 45 days to report their trades, so by the time you copy them, the moment may have passed. And the app itself warns this is more for fun than serious financial advice.
All right, it is interesting. Yeah. Janae, thank you. For more on this Fact Check team topic, including links to their sources, scan the QR code or visit thenationaldesk.com. So to come, our team of correspondents breaks down this week in Washington, from the staffing issues plaguing the nation's airports to the obstacles lawmakers are continuing to run into with the so-called Big Beautiful Bill.
And welcome back. Our Washington Bureau covers the nation's capital every day, and our team of correspondents reports on the important issues facing the country and how they impact you. The summer travel season's sneaking up on us, and after a series of incidents involving air traffic control, lawmakers on Capitol Hill are raising questions about air travel safety. National correspondent Audra Elnishar, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy was grilled about this during 2 separate congressional hearings. What did we learn?
Well, Steve, when I get on an airplane, I'm more concerned about if I'm going to get stuck in the middle seat rather than if my pilot can communicate with air traffic control on the ground. But given all of the air traffic control outages at Newark Airport in New Jersey, plus now we're learning about an outage in Atlanta, plus Denver, America is really getting a look under the hood at the inner workings of the FAA and air traffic control, and we're learning just how outdated everything is. Take a listen to how the Transportation Secretary described it.
This, the system we currently use, it truly is 25, 35, 40 years old in some places. We should have paid way more attention to it as a country. We've let it age, and now we're seeing the cracks of that age play out in real time for us.
Duffy said, I can't get this out of my head, Steve. Duffy told lawmakers that they actually go on eBay to try to find replacement parts for some of their systems. They're that old. So what is Duffy doing about it? He's put out this proposal for a complete revamp of America's air traffic control system. And it's a huge undertaking. 25,000 new radios, replacing all copper wires with fiber optic wires, rebuilding air traffic control towers. There's a reason it's never been done before. It's extremely ambitious. And he doesn't know how much it will cost. He's asking Congress to determine how much it will cost, and he's asking for all the money up front. Congress is not exactly good at getting things done quickly, especially when it comes to things with a massive price tag. So that may be a tall order, and there's not exactly been movement on it yet, despite all this urgency we're seeing with outages at Newark. So it's a really urgent problem, and it's something, you know, all of us can relate to, especially with the busy summer travel season coming up.
Right. It'll be interesting to see if there's any slippage in confidence among the traveling public. I guess we'll hear more about that as the summer goes on. Meanwhile, President Trump wrapping up his first foreign trip, visiting Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE over 4 days this past week.
This has been an amazing trip. We've raised trillions of dollars of investment for our country.
National correspondent Kayla Gaskins, the president touting a series of splashy business deals for the U.S.
Yeah, if you could tell from how Trump sounded in that clip from Air Force One, we have a very happy president. He went over to the Middle East to really focus on securing these business deals, to securing investments from the Gulf states into the U.S. And Steve, that's what he walked away from their trip with. So it started off in Saudi Arabia. That's where he met with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and secured $600 billion dollars worth of investments and deals from Saudi Arabia investing in the U.S. And in U.S. companies specifically. We saw a lot of other business leaders there along this trip as well. Elon Musk, notably one of them as well. And then after Saudi Arabia, he went to Qatar, and that's where there was even, more billions of dollars worth of deals, and specifically a deal with Boeing worth $96 billion. The Qataris planning to purchase 210 jets from Boeing. That's expected to create hundreds of thousands of jobs here in the U.S. And then he topped off the trip in the UAE. He's actually the only second U.S. president to visit the UAE. The first was George W. Bush back in 2008. So Donald Trump had a warm welcome there. They seemed very happy to be welcoming, the leader of America. And they had even more deals. So the UAE has already pledged $1.4 trillion worth of investments over the next 10 years. So this trip really helped shore that up. And then the UAE also promised an additional $200 million worth of investments as well. And so with all of the pledges and everything that came out of this week, the White House says that their deals, investments, and pledges are now nearing the $2 trillion mark. So they're heading back to the United States. I think Steve, very happy with what they've accomplished.
Yeah, and speaking of deals, the president turning his attention to Capitol Hill as Congress and House Republicans continue working on a, quote, big, beautiful tax and spending bill that will include many of President Trump's policy priorities. National correspondent Matt Galka, what are some of the sticking points for Republicans at the moment as they continue crafting this bill?
Yeah, Steve, this bill represents how Republicans are trying to pass a budget that includes funding a good chunk of President Trump's domestic agenda, things like more money for border security, more money for defense spending, energy policy changes, and extending tax cuts from his first term. The trick is finding the money to do all of this. Some blue state Republicans want bigger tax breaks for their constituents, and more hardline conservatives want Medicaid cuts and work requirements for Medicaid. That Medicaid issue is the main sticking point in the House right now. They're trying to work it out, but I spoke with Missouri Senator Josh Hawley this past week, and he basically said they're wasting their time.
That's not going to pass in the Senate. I'm not going to vote for it. I'm not going to vote for Medicaid benefit cuts. If they want to find savings, my advice is go cut the Green New Deal subsidies. Go cut the subsidies that go to rich people who invest in China. Let's protect working people in the United States.
Now, the House Speaker has said he's trying to get something passed through the House by Memorial Day, meaning the clock's ticking on these negotiations.
Clock is ticking loudly at this point. Yes, Matt, Kayla, Audra. Great work as always. Thanks for your hard work. Back to you.
Starting next month, millions in California will see a sharp rise in their home insurance premiums. As you take a look at the list on your screen there, as the country's largest insurer, State Farm, got approval to raise rates by 17% for homeowners, 15% for condo and renters, and up to 38% for rental dwellings. A judge approved the decision Wednesday, citing that the company had evidence of dire financial distress in the wake of the Los Angeles deadly wildfires. Meantime, State Farm says it's paid out more than $3.4 billion to customers affected. Next season's NFL tickets are for sale. The Federal Trade Commission already warning ticket companies to be honest about its fees. In a letter to StubHub, the agency said that it must comply with its new rule on unfair and deceptive fees. The rule requires companies to disclose the total prices clearly. StubHub has denied hiding fees in the past and claims it supports transparency rules. Coming up next, understaffed and underfunded. The changes frequent border crossers say are vital to cutting down on travel time. And high school hazing controversy. The school district weighs in on the possible consequences. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. And we start in New York with a new development in the ongoing high school hazing controversy.
The incident that has been the talk of the West Hill School District and made national headlines over the last few weeks was not on the agenda for the West Hill School Board meeting, but the superintendent did address it.
The students who are involved have accepted responsibility and are facing school consequences under the District Code of Conduct, as well as whatever legal consequences take place through the District Attorney's Office.
The hazing allegations involve 11 members of the high school lacrosse team. The Onondaga County District Attorney says the teams drove newer members of the team to a remote area. People dressed in black then came out of the woods, armed with what happened to be an airsoft gun and at least one knife. Currently, it has not yet been decided how the district will discipline those involved.
More staffing and more technology. That's the goal of a new federal proposal to help ports of entry like this one in Eagle Pass. The people that we've talked to today say it could help them get through faster.
I pretty much go almost every day to Mexico. I have businesses on both sides of the border.
Morris Libson is very familiar with the process of crossing back and forth across the border.
So sometimes I go and come maybe 2 or 3 times.
And for the border community, he says staffing at these ports is a huge deal. More staff could make these journeys last 3 or 4 minutes rather than 3 or 4 hours some days.
Showing support for the president and love for his wife.
Just thought it was really nice. It was beautiful.
and I knew it would be something that she'd like.
A limited edition.
One of 250.
And Tim Pettit shelled out $640 for a watch that may now be even more of a one-of-a-kind than he bargained for.
Get your Trump watch right now. Go to gettrumpwatches.com. It's Trump time.
Pettit bought the watch after hearing an ad like that one on the radio.
The T is missing. It just says RUMP.
So it should say Trump.
Should say Trump.
Instead,
it says rump.
I think that someone needs to be aware of it in their licensing department.
Still ahead here, the buy now, pay later structure sweeps the nation. The popular big box store now joining in on the trend. Plus mission uncertainty, why FEMA says they aren't prepared for upcoming storms. Costco is now joining the buy now, pay later bandwagon. They are partnering with payment platform Affirm to offer installment plans for online payments on larger purchases. You'll be able to pay for purchases priced from $500 to $17,000. Interest in buy now, pay later services has soared. 3 big credit bureaus will start including these loans in calculating your credit score. Ahead of the hurricane season on June 1st, the Federal Emergency Management Agency says they aren't prepared for upcoming storms and the damage they will bring. An internal review found the agency is struggling with minimal coordination with states and new red tape that it says will slow emergency response. Since the Trump administration took office, it's lost about 30% of its full-time staff due to layoffs and employee buyouts. New details: Airbnb expanding its services, going beyond just an app to book a vacation spot. The platform launching their redesigned app, and the app will now allow users to book services or check out what's happening near their rental property. People can order a chef, book a massage, or a professional trainer. The company trying to compete with other travel platforms and hotels that offer amenities. That'll be all for us on the weekend edition of the National News Desk, America's News Now. Don't forget, you can catch us live from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time. Check your local listings. You can also watch us online and catch up with the latest headlines on thenationaldesk.com. Thanks for watching the weekend edition of the National News Desk. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and from all of us here, have a great week.